The crowbar scraped against the old concrete floor, sending a chill up 12-year-old Danny's arms as the sound echoed through the empty gas station. His mother, Elena Martinez, was out front trying to fix the squeaky door again, unaware that her son's curiosity was about to change both their lives forever. Just a few weeks earlier, Elena had been sitting in a tiny Phoenix apartment surrounded by unpaid bills, trying not to cry in front of her son. The eviction notice had arrived that morning, and by afternoon a second envelope had landed on their table, a letter from a lawyer about an inheritance. Her late Uncle Ray, a man she barely knew and whom people called the Hermit of Route 40, had left her his only property, a run-down gas station in a forgotten desert town called Redemption, Arizona. No money, no explanation, just a deed and a set of keys. Most people would have thrown it away. But when you have nothing left to lose, even a broken promise looks like hope. So she packed their old Honda, filled the tank with her last $50, and drove 6 hours into the wasteland with her son asleep beside her. The highway grew emptier with every mile. When they finally reached Redemption, it looked less like a town and more like a graveyard of sun-bleached buildings and shattered windows. Her inheritance sat 2 miles past the last diner, a sagging concrete building with rusted pumps, tumbleweeds piled against its walls, and a faded sign that barely read Ray's stop. Danny looked up at his mother and whispered, "We're not really staying here, are we?" Elena wanted to lie. She wanted to say it was just a stop, but instead she said softly, "Let's just look inside." Inside, the air was thick with dust and the ghosts of cigarette smoke. Shelves sat empty, a single cash register gathering decades of grime. The lights flickered weakly when she flipped the switch, but the electricity still worked, a small miracle in a place long abandoned. They explored room by room, the small living quarters out back, the broken bathroom, the peeling wallpaper. It was awful, but it was theirs. That night they ate store-bought sandwiches and slept on a couch that smelled of old oil, listening to a silence so deep it made their ears ring. The next morning, Elena walked into the only diner in town. The locals stared like they'd seen a ghost. "You're Ray's niece," the waitress said flatly. "Condolences, that station's been dead 15 years. They told her to leave, to sell it, to forget this cursed place. But what they didn't know was that Elena had nothing else. No job, no savings. Just this crumbling building in a dying town. So when her son said, "Mom, maybe we can fix it," she didn't crush his hope. They scrubbed, painted, swept, and cleared out decades of junk. Locals called her crazy. But every time she thought about giving up, she'd see Danny smiling, covered in dust, believing this place could still have a heartbeat. She couldn't take that away from him. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that the real treasure wasn't waiting in the sunlight above. It was sleeping beneath their feet. It happened on a burning afternoon, 2 weeks after they moved in. Danny had been cleaning in the garage when he shouted, "Mom, come here." He pointed to the cracked concrete near the workbench. The lines weren't random, they formed a rectangle. Elena frowned, grabbed an old crowbar, and pried. The floor groaned, then gave way with a metallic thud. Beneath the concrete was steel. A hidden door, her pulse quickened as she brushed away the dust. There was a handle and a keyhole. "Get Uncle Ray's keys," she whispered. The third key turned with a soft click and something ancient inside the mechanism released. Together they pulled the hatch open. A gust of air rose, dry, metallic, and stale, like it hadn't moved in half a century. Beneath them, a ladder disappeared into darkness. Elena's heart pounded. "Stay behind me," she told her son, and they climbed down. The ladder ended in a concrete tunnel, silent and cold. They walked cautiously forward, flashlight beams dancing across the walls until they reached a massive steel door. Faded letters were stenciled across it. U.S. Army Depot 407, authorized personnel only. Elena froze. The military. Here. Her trembling hands found another key, and as the final lock released, the door groaned open. The air that spilled out was heavy with the smell of metal and paper and the weight of history. When her flashlight hit the far wall, she saw shelves upon shelves of boxes, all labeled, all untouched. In that moment, the room felt less like a storage vault and more like a time capsule sealed by ghosts. Inside those boxes, wrapped in wax paper and dust, were war bonds. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Each dated from the 1940s, each worth thousands at the time, millions now. The more they opened, the more unbelievable it became. Uncut currency sheets, mint condition silver coin. Sealed military records. It was a hidden fortune, forgotten by time, guarded by concrete, and preserved in the desert. In one locked cabinet, Elena found a ledger written in careful handwriting. It explained everything. During World War II, Ray's father had secretly run this gas station as a front for a military payroll depot. When the war ended, the vault was supposed to be reclaimed, but it was forgotten, lost to paperwork and desert sand. Decades later, Uncle Ray discovered it, but instead of using it, he locked it again and left a final note in the ledger. For Elena, do better than I did. Make something matter. Sitting on the cold floor, Elena wept. All the years of struggle, the hunger, the fear of eviction, all of it, suddenly dwarfed by the realization that her family had been sitting on a secret fortune for nearly a century. "Mom," Danny whispered, voice trembling, "are we rich?" Elena hugged him tightly. "We're going to be okay," she said. But in her heart, she knew the truth. This discovery wasn't just money. It was a responsibility. By morning, she had a plan: find a lawyer, figure out how to handle it quietly. But before she could even leave town, a convoy of trucks pulled up. County inspectors, a demolition order. "Unsafe structure," the man said. "We're tearing it down." Panic seized her chest. If they inspected the garage, if they found the vault, everything would vanish into government hands forever. Desperate, she took a gamble. "Wait," she said. "This building holds history, a sealed WWII vault beneath the garage." The inspector frowned, skeptical, but curiosity won. When they opened the hatch and his flashlight cut through the dark, his face went pale. "Nobody's demolishing this," he said softly. What followed was chaos, government agents, historians, reporters flooding redemption. The vault was catalogued, authenticated, and valued. When it was over, Elena's inheritance, the one everyone mocked, was worth $189 million. After taxes and preservation, she received nearly half. Overnight, she went from a broke single mom to one of the richest women in Arizona. But she didn't move to Beverly Hills or buy supercars. She stayed in redemption long enough to turn Ray's stop into a museum, honoring her uncle's choice to protect history and his faith in her to use it wisely. Money didn't change Elena, it amplified her purpose. She moved back to Phoenix, bought a modest home, and started a foundation called the Second Chances Fund, helping single parents avoid the same despair she once knew. Redemption, Arizona, came back to life. The diner reopened. The old motel filled again. The museum drew travelers from across the country. The once forgotten town had become a symbol of hope, all because of one secret buried beneath concrete. A year later, at the museum's opening, Elena stood beside Danny, now taller, more confident, watching visitors peer down through glass at the sealed vault. "Do you think Uncle Ray knew we'd find it?" he asked. She smiled. I think he hoped we would. In that moment, she realized that her uncle hadn't left her wealth, he'd left her a test. And by choosing compassion over greed, she'd passed. The money had given them safety, but what truly saved them was what came after, using it to lift others, to rebuild, to give back. The once cursed gas station now stood as a monument not to treasure, but to transformation. Months passed and the ripple grew. Elena's foundation changed hundreds of lives and her story spread across America, the mother who found a fortune beneath her uncle's gas station and used it to fund hope. One night a knock came at her door. A young woman stood there crying, Patricia Santos, a single mom saved by one of Elena's grants. She'd driven hours just to say thank you. "You don't even know me," she sobbed, "but you saved my children." Elena took her hands and said, "Because someone once saved me." The two women stood under the stars, bound by the invisible thread of shared struggle. After Patricia left, Elena looked up at the night sky and whispered, "You did it, Uncle Ray. You made something matter." The real treasure, she realized, wasn't gold or bonds. It was the chance to help others breathe again. The vault beneath the desert had become a heartbeat for hundreds of families who'd stopped believing in miracles. 1 year later, standing before a crowd at the museum's anniversary, Elena spoke with tears in her eyes. "A year ago, I inherited something everyone said was worthless," she began. "But it turned out to be the key that unlocked a second chance, not just for me, but for this town, and for every person who's ever felt forgotten." She looked at her son, now smiling proudly in the front row. "Sometimes, what seems buried and broken is just waiting for someone brave enough to dig deeper." The crowd applauded, and as she stepped off the stage, she knew her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever needed. Hope, that night driving home under a sea of desert stars, Danny asked softly, "Mom, do you think there are other vaults like ours out there?" Elena smiled. "Maybe, but not all treasure is buried in the ground, son. Sometimes it's inside us waiting to be found." If you believe in second chances, hit that subscribe button, share this story, and remember, even the most broken places can hide the greatest miracles.